lot ahead. Welcome on today's show. This month marks 5 years since the start of the global pandemic, and a new survey from Robert Half Canada explores how things have changed in this past 5 years, and we'll of course discuss the findings with our friend Michael French. Also on the show, first-time actress Jennie Bovard just wrapped up filming a 6-episode first season of Pretty Blind. That'll be airing on AMI this fall. And she's ready to spill all the tea. I spill all of the time. Clean up in aisle 5.
This is Kelly and Company.
With me, Nazreed Abdul-Majid, as we welcome you. If you're following us on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube page. We'd love it if you did. If you're listening to the podcast, give us a rating and review. Just look for Kelly and Company using your favorite podcast platform. And Nazreen, I have to ask, because this has been, for the last couple of months, a pretty stressful time. Really, the whole country has felt under some kind of stress. For now, anyway, we have a brand new prime minister in position for now, before he calls an election in 10 minutes or whenever it's going to be. Could already be by now. But I'm curious, do you feel a little less stress? Did you handle the stress, in your opinion, well? Your feelings?
Well, I mean, I feel a little less stressed, but I'm afraid it's going to be the same pattern all over again with new leadership, with bold promises at first and then taking a turn later on, and disappointing later on, if you know what I mean. I think we all, not all, but like a lot of us feel the same way about, at first it's a lot of bold promises, people get excited, and then it just fades away over time. And that's what I'm like stressed about, really. Yeah,
I mean, I would just like us to focus on the things that we're saying we can do here that will make changes. That's where I'm most stressed, whether it's this administration of ours or whoever gets in a post-election. We got to look at a change that's a permanent, now different lifetime change for this country, and doing things differently, and making sure that whatever one action causes in collateral isn't known as collateral damage, that we are able to roll with the punches and correct things and think of what we need to, but certainly bring us forward. We got a lot on the show today, a lot of conversations, but one thing we need to take care of first, we're looking for members of the disability community to join our AMI research panel. Our research panel guides us with every decision that we make at AMI. That includes programming, media consumption, and accessibility. Participants are compensated for all long-form studies. So for more information, or in case you just want to jump right in and join, go to ami.ca/panel. Love to have you on board. And if you would, folks, for our show, if you have questions about what we're doing, email us at kellyco@ami.ca and give us a call, 1-866-509-4545. We always would love to hear from you, and maybe even play your message right out here on the program.
So as blind and low vision folks, we have lots to pay attention to in the kitchen for our safety and for others around us. Independent living skills specialist Leanne Baarda is here with tips and considerations. Leanne, let's get to those tips.
Yeah, so this is probably one of my favorite skills to teach when I'm out in the community. And so when I don't have to do all tech all the time, this is probably the most enjoyable part of my job.
Yeah, I'd like that too, because hopefully it ended with food being made and I'd get something to eat.
Exactly. Yep. You never know. So it's a great opportunity for me to learn from my clients and to see how, their recipes and learn from their cultural heritage. I always learn something new, which is great. So I find this job, you never stop learning. And
that's really cool.
So if I can just give them a little bit of tips to help them maintain independence and to regain some skills that they were missing doing. Like, for example, I was visiting an elderly woman this morning and she was missing baking for herself. So we talked about some considerations, and so I'll kind of get into basically what I told her this morning.
That's awesome.
So when we're going to bake, the first thing or even cook, we want to plan ahead. You want to read your recipe, put it in an accessible format, whether it's audio, large print, braille. Figure out what tools you need, your ingredients, and what appliances you're going to need to complete your recipe. And then you kind of want to organize it so that they're quick at hand. So as I've mentioned probably a million times, I don't know why I haven't gotten stock in some sort of kitchen tray organization, but
Swiss Chalet takeout containers. That's what it is, right? They're the best. Those Swiss Chalet takeout containers.
Yeah, I use those, or the cafeteria style tray like you get at the mall food court. That's probably my number one tool. Yeah. And so whenever I'm working with people, we usually put down a piece of non-slip mat. We put down a cafeteria style tray. And then at 12 o'clock at the top of the tray, we usually will put a garbage bowl. So if you have peels, shells, garbage, it can go in there and you can deal with it later. Smart. And then you have a bowl for your finished product on whichever side makes sense to you.
Yeah, don't do what I do when I leave all the peels on the counter and just everything falls on the ground and I have to like...
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was thinking about with flour and stuff, right? Like, you know, it is great to have that space because you could slip, fall. Yeah. What a mess that you don't know about. You could track it all over your place.
Yeah, exactly.
Like yesterday I was baking and I found like flour all over my floor and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, no, it's the same. So using that cafeteria style tray, if you're measuring your flour, your sugar, whatever, even your liquid ingredients, use the cafeteria style tray, and then it'll catch the mess. And then all you have to deal with is the tray and not your whole counter and the floor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, you can play with things like if you have some usable vision, like color and contrast. So if you have a dark colored tray with a white colored small cutting board on it, whatever you can do to enhance, you know, what you have, the better.
Yeah, that makes so much sense for usability. I know when I had more vision and I worked, that's what I needed, because that's just what avoids so many little accidents or just grabbing the wrong thing, and just being aware. So you're not reaching for something and grab the knife you left facing you instead of the other way.
Exactly. Yep. And so our tray also gives us a extra measure of knife safety. So whenever you're not using your knife, it always gets tucked under the bottom right-hand corner, so it's predictable and you always know where to find it.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then when you're done, my other trick is to, instead of putting it in the sink and then risk cutting yourself when you're washing the dishes, put it behind the taps so you always know where to find it.
Good idea. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, our tray has some organizational features to it. So when I'm baking, I put all the wet ingredients on the left and all the dry ingredients on the right, and then I know exactly where to find them. So just adding, you know, one less thing to be frustrated about and one more thing to keep yourself, you know, in order and getting your recipe done quicker.
That's great. I like the heavy preparation and the predictability so that you're prepared instead of, you know, scrambling the moment of. That's what I do. Again,
stitch in time saves 9.
And bake.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so
this is exposing me for real.
Yeah, so if you can, like, you know, label your spices and your containers that you're using in whatever, you know, accessible labeling format that works for you, that also you can either, whether you're using the pen friend, the talking label wand, NaviLens, whatever, you know, whatever's going to work for you. It just kind of adds to your system.
Okay.
How about
it's
the
interesting.
cleanup?
Yeah, that's the thing. Go ahead, Lee. You said have the all nearby in a caddy?
Yep, exactly. So having like a little like caddy, so you can have like your spatulas, your measuring spoons, your measuring cups. If you have, you know, if it's wide enough, you can put maybe a small container of Lysol wipes, or a spray bottle with vinegar and water that we talked about last time, with some paper towel, whatever is going to be the easiest to deal with. And especially if you're dealing with things like touching meat where you don't want to cross-contaminate, you want to make sure that you wash your hands in between and that your surfaces are clean every time in between. So just little things to add.
Yeah, it's interesting because as Nazreen's saying about the way she tackles it, starts doing the chore kind of just like, I need this. Oh yeah, I've got to put this in. Oh, I need this too. It's interesting when I'm sure, Leanne, as you see with your clients, those who maybe have been blind all their life or had enough low vision, they really are orderly in the things that they have to do, knowing where everything is, because otherwise they'll go looking for something for hours if it's been moved or something like that, versus somebody who may have lost their vision later. That must be where it's so hard, unless they by nature were an organized person. That must be one of those things that you have to work with people a lot, because we are talking things that can be dangerous, that can create mess that is really a struggle to clean up.
Exactly. And also too, like, you have well-meaning family and friends and caregivers who come in to try to organize you. And for some people, if you move something, it may as well be gone.
Yes.
And so talking to family members and advocating for the client to let them know that, if the client has put something there, it always has to go back in the same place.
How about the appliances?
Yeah. So for appliances, you want to consider the appliance that's going to get the job done the easiest, the safest, and the quickest. So now we have no shortage of fun gadgets we can use, from blenders to Instant Pots, air fryers, toaster ovens that do like 50 things, and so on. And now we even have ovens that have air fryer features built in. So there's so many options out there. So you just have to choose the one that's going to make the most sense for you. If you need to have it marked, that's something that we can come in and do for you. We use typically like raised, we call them bump dots. So they're in a variety of shapes, textures, and sizes. And we've used them for marking anything from the washer and dryer all the way to telephones, remotes, whatever you need marked. If there's a way to do it, we will try to find a way.
Now the scary appliances like the stove and oven, do you have any tips for those?
Yeah, so that one is one that I would definitely recommend having an instructor come in, because there are some specialized techniques that we use when we're teaching. So for example, if you're approaching the oven, instead of pulling the door, standing in front of it and pulling it towards yourself, we always suggest to stand to the side, pull the door open a little bit, look away, and then push the door down, and then deal with it that way. So that way you have the counter to give you some stability if you have, additional disabilities, balance issues. But it's just an extra insurance policy that you're not going to fall into the oven.
Oh, yeah. When we are dealing with stuff, as we're dealing with the cleanup around everything, I heard you mention before the grid pattern for wiping, because again, we're looking at so many potential, especially if someone takes a bit to sell on the, hey, keep everything in this area and put things away. When you're done with them, splash, something goes on the floor, something gets knocked over as they're reaching for something else. Is that grid pattern even in this application, whether you're cleaning on the stove, cleaning up a mess at the counter, or just cleaning up when you're done, the best way to do it?
Absolutely. Yeah, the grid pattern is always great, because you have, you're making sure that you're covering that entire surface systematically and organized, and that you're not going to miss something. So, especially like if you're cleaning something like oil, which is a real drag, it seems to be one of those things that takes forever to wipe up. And so if rice, yes,
gosh,
couscous, that's even worse.
Just sticks to the surface, and it's so annoying to clean up.
Exactly. Yep. So, at least if you're doing your grid, you know exactly where you've been and that you've covered your surface, and you're pretty well guaranteed that you've got everything picked up.
Okay. I'm curious about either of you. Niz, do you use gloves for when you're dealing with your hot stuff, pulling things in and out?
Oh, I have to. I'm very sensitive and fragile when I think about it. But at the same time, there's so many times where I make a mistake and I take the gloves off when I put it on top of the stove. And I accidentally touch the surface. And I don't mean to, but I'm like, oh my God, I just had gloves on. Like, why did I take them off?
Yeah, you forget. But why do you take them off? See, for me, I have trouble with that, because I'm really worried about trying to handle something, thinking I've got it, and dropping it, especially with some of the great gloves that are there, because I can't see to confirm in my mind necessarily you haven't.
Yeah, I've been telling people about, instead of using oven mitts, I find you feel kind of like a lobster when you're using those.
For sure.
And especially for clients who don't have a lot of dexterity, or they have like neuropathy in their hands. So I get them to switch over to using oven gloves instead, like if we're going to go with the name brand, the Of glove. Yep. Or if you're going to pick it up, the silicone, they have barbecue versions. So the barbecue ones are actually good because the sleeves are a little bit longer than the oven gloves, which only go to the wrist. The
Right.
barbecue ones go almost to the elbow, which is gives you a little more protection.
Okay.
And they're usually like made of Kevlar, and they have like a silicone grip, so it just gives you, the ability to use all of your hands to feel and really get a good grip on whatever you're taking out of the oven.
Yeah, and I guess using it gives you the confidence in using it, whereas I just get, I don't think I've given them enough of a chance. Hey, I can throw them on, take something hot, yank it out, and then I want to put it somewhere, and I'm still scared to death. What if your hand isn't quite in position and you just drop this right on your foot? Like, oh my God. So I know that is the thing, and I've been that person that would rather use something else, dampen some, a cloth, and grab it that way, which is it's just ridiculous. So speaking of taking it out, what's the best advice for knowing when our stuff is ready and dealing with that? Our senses?
Yeah, so we want to use time, we want to use temperature, and I always use a timer like Google or Alexa, so that I know if I've cooked something at a certain amount of time for a certain temperature, I can pretty well guesstimate that it's going to be ready. But we can use other sensory clues like the smell, the texture, let's say, for example, like a grilled cheese, right? When you're flipping it in the pan, you can use the spatula to kind of scrape on the back of it, and you can hear that it's got a little bit more texture to it. Whereas opposed when you're starting, it's a little bit softer. And similar to like ground beef or ground turkey, it starts out soft and crumbly, and then it turns much more firm, and then the smell changes. So whatever context clues you can use them to your advantage.
Yeah, because a lot of people say, for example, the toothpick method for baking. And
absolutely,
a lot of the times you can't see that, and even if you feel it, you can't really tell if it's clean through.
No.
So that's yeah.
Well, especially like if you have something like chocolate chips in it, sometimes the chocolate chips will be melty, and then is that the cake or is it the melted chocolate chip, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But how do you deal with if we're done there? I'm just kind of curious about wet and dry measurements. Measurements always the thing. Oh, obviously it's bad enough remembering cup size and whatever's what. But is there a difference? Because it feels like it. Obviously, a lot of wet stuff is heavier, whatever. How do we deal with the lightness and whatever? What's your recommendations here?
So for all dry ingredients, I would suggest the nesting measuring cups. And you can get those in different colors and contrasts. And I would use the glass Pyrex measuring cups for liquids, because it really does have to be exact, especially if you're baking. You want to make sure that you have the right amount, or your whole recipe could flop. So I've marked the Pyrex ones with fabric paint. So most people usually, with the 1 cup measure, it's pretty simple. You just mark the top where the 1 cup is, the half mark, and the quarter. And then you can kind of use your finger to guesstimate from there. One of the latest baking tricks that I've learned. So if you want to make sure that your baking comes out lighter, instead of putting the measuring cup directly into the flour or the sugar, you want to use a spoon to kind of measure it out and put it into the cup on your own, and it'll make your cakes a lot lighter and fluffier.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about the flour situation, the messiness?
Oh yes. So we have our tray, and then leveling off is really important. So using the back of a butter knife to scrape across the top to make sure it's level, and then you can do it over the open container. So I like to have, like, for flour, like a large wide mouth container, so that I can put the measuring cup kind of sitting inside just over the opening, and then as I'm scooping in, I know for sure it's either going into the measuring cup itself or onto the tray. So I'm making sure I have like an insurance policy that it's not going to be a disaster.
Well, awesome. Do you have any final tips before we let you go?
Just experimentation is great. Try to find recipes and ingredients that you're excited to work with and that you have been wanting to try. But, just because you have the vision loss, it doesn't mean it can stop you from enjoying a full, culinary adventure. And so you have to do it just a little bit of a different way, but it's still possible.
And possible to keep it where you're not making a mess, or what some people worry about. Well, am I wasting more than someone else would? And we know that, hey, you're going to always waste a little bit when doing things and baking, but not because you have to do it a different way because you're low vision or blind.
No, I can assure you, even with the vision, I have 20/20 and I still make a mess. So I think it just ends up, however neat you are in the kitchen, and sometimes it happens, and it's part of the fun. It's part of, we'll call it the sensory adventure of cooking.
It is fun. It is fun to experiment, and that's what I've been doing. Just trying to find your own routine, your own process through it all, and that's what makes it enjoyable. But thank you so much, Leanne.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a great week, guys.
Thanks, Leanne.
You too. This was a great part 1 on kitchen safety. Next time we'll get to food safety and handling with Leanne Baarda.
So people who don't know Toronto, Niz, or the region, the GTA, there is so much diversity there. Someone in Leanne's position, as she was talking, all I kept thinking about is off the top when, I get to learn a lot about people's food habits, their cultures, and things like, ooh, boy. I was just joking with, hey, you do that job and hopefully there's a meal later or something, you get the sample. But what excitement helping and learning all about how to make somebody's food from their culture, something otherwise you wouldn't have been exposed to. That is so neat.
Just trying something new is obviously fun. But yeah, like for me, I look for the easiest recipes out there, but I do like trying new things.
Yeah. Well, I bet Leanne does too. Like if someone says, hey, when you're over here Saturday, we're going to make this, and I'm sure she jumps online, starts looking at what it is, how you make it, and then also keeping in mind, I can't memorize this because they may have a different recipe, a different way, or the family way, or the secret recipe that mom had. So I think that's just really exciting, really cool. Leanne Baarda with us once a month here on the program. So many great tips for working around the home, outside the home. So many of us as she's our independent living skills specialist. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Talk to Nazreen out there. Lots of stuff she posts and stuff like that for the show. Help you keep an ear on what we're doing, and reminding you to join us and maybe comment on the conversation at Kelly & Co. AMI, the handle on Instagram and Twitter. This month marks 5 years since the start of the global pandemic, when workplaces just simply shut their offices and the world changed, seemingly overnight. So much has evolved since 2020 and now, including sentiments and expectations in the workplace. A new survey from Robert Half Canada, they used 835 professionals to do this. They were 18 and older across Canada. This was conducted this March. Explores how things have changed since the start of the pandemic. Let's find out more with our regional manager, Michael French. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Kelly. I love being on with you. Thanks for having me.
So, Michael, let's think back, and I've been hearing a lot of this, right, as we've celebrated the 5 years this month. So many people reflecting on different things, and things that it's amazing what you forget over that time. The different strains of the pandemic, Delta, and so on. You stop and say, "Oh, shoot, yeah, there was a this, there was a that," including whatever was going on in the world in different places at the time. So, how have things changed overall when we're looking at workplaces?
Well, you're having me on a very interesting day because it was 5 years ago on March 19th that the Premier said we have to stay at home from work. So we are actually the 5-year anniversary. Before I came on, I thought, well, if a decade's 10 years, what's 5 years? The proper term is a quinquennium or a lustrum. And I had never heard of either of those terms before.
A lustrium, no way. Quinquennium, at least. Quinquennium, at least I can comprehend because of a quintet with jazz music and quintuplets and things like that.
Wait, what's the second one? What?
The second one is lustrum, Lustrum.
Lustrum.
So I get the first 4 words, lust, but where does the come from? Lustrum. So a little bit different. Wow. But you know what? It is 5 years to the day, and it's interesting. So we surveyed nearly 1,000 people, and it's always in Canada. We always do Canadian surveys. And we've come around now. It's been a long time. So when we ask the employers, sort of like, what's changed in 5 years? And you have different cohorts. You've got everything from the boomers, who generally over COVID, many of them said goodbye. I'm going to retire. I'm out of here. Then you have the Gen Zs, or Gen Xers, all the way through. Well, interesting. The employers generally said that their people are more productive at home. So now you have the employers saying that, not just the employees, but everyone feels the company culture has gone down, that people aren't in the office, and both employers and professionals are saying company culture has dipped. It's a real problem. And then we've also heard a bit of a change now by demographic. We have some of the older workers, maybe the few boomers left, or like I'm a Gen Xer, who maybe grew up in an environment where we were in the office every day. You come to work to do your work and you go home to be off. We were not that flexible before, but now we've sort of embraced it, and we tend to be enjoying it, enjoying some flexibility. And maybe now we've changed our minds fully on, well, drive the flexibility and embrace it even more. But then we talk to the workers, the professionals, and they're saying, well, I don't know my colleagues that well. I'm missing the personal connection. And as soon as you don't have that connection, you started wondering, well, let's say someone doesn't know their workers that well. They don't feel a connection. Maybe they don't have the long-term stay now that they would have had before.
Right.
If you don't feel a tie to the company, if you don't feel a tie to the people, and many times it's the people versus the company you feel tied to. Most people really enjoy their workers more than the company even sometimes. And if you don't feel that, are you now just putting in your time till something else comes along? So we're starting to see some of that in the workplace. We're starting to see some people, maybe if things get challenging, or if we're going through some wind in our face, we've had some inflation and things were tough in the last couple of years. Were we all in it together and we were all tied and trying to support each other, or was it really easy to quit and move on? So we're dealing with a little bit of that right now too. And so that's something that wasn't really, we didn't really see before. Companies where people would make decisions after a little bit more thought and maybe talking to their spouse or family more. But now if they don't have those friends at work, they may be a little bit more easy to say, you know what, I'm going to move on. So a couple of things that we're seeing right now.
Interesting. Fascinating when you get looking at it, because we've talked about the importance of the flexibility thing. So other things in the survey, Michael, such as that, what are we seeing now? I love the move on thing. I always think, wow, it must be nice to say, hey, I can move on. And I know our society, even before the pandemic, was at that state that, wow, you've been here 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. Whoa, you're lucky. That's really amazing. It's almost unheard of.
Well, tenure is something that really some companies really celebrate and promote it. So that's great. I'm coming up on my 23 years at Robert Half, so I'm proud of that. And my company really does celebrate me, but other people are moving on a little bit less. But when we talk to people about what's the priorities in the workplace, and from workers, maintaining work-life balance. Now that's a really hot topic. That's been a topic for about 20 years. I'm not certain we ever really before figured it out. And I'm more now thinking with flexibility, is it balance, or more is it integration? Because is it more, well, maybe I take 2 hours for lunch and I go to a spin class, or I go to my kids' school and I help in the lunchroom, or so then maybe I work in the morning, 2 hours for lunch, work in the afternoon. So it's more how my personal life and work life come together. So it's maintaining some kind of balance there, or integration. Other things coming up now, we're starting to see more people focusing on back to their salary and their title. How important is their title? And this coming up being quite high. And then making sure the company they work for, their company values aligns with their personal values. And that may have been something over COVID. A lot of companies were really pushing their sort of social side, their compassion. And now we're back to the real world. Are the company values aligning with my personal values? And that's popping up very high on workers' radar. And then, because we've seen a dip in company culture, everyone's aware of it, people are saying, I want to contribute to a positive company culture. So I'll be there when you want me there, and I'll contribute to it. But I want to make sure that the work we're doing really promotes a strong company culture, and I'm proud of the work that my company does. Those are a few things that the workers are talking about.
That's neat. One of the things you mentioned there before we move on, because I'm curious of some of the numbers, especially people who are, what people are looking for when they're job searching. But one of the things I'm kind of curious of when we talk about titles, I understand financially, especially right now, are titles connected, do you think, more so now with the financial piece because we're still seeing equal pay for equal work as an issue?
So titles are always important to a cohort of workers. It is becoming a larger importance to a bigger cohort now. But we're also seeing people shying away from, let's what would say, old titles. We don't hear the word secretary anymore, except for legal secretaries. We don't hear the word clerks, like the administrative assistants, accounting coordinators. So some people are really looking for what would be a modern progressive title that then correlates to their pay. We've seen a little bit of sort of promotion without pay in the last couple of years. That's always a hot topic. You got to find something for me with my promotion, a little bit of money at least, and they can want to revisit it later. But I'd say make sure you're reviewing job descriptions, getting rid of any kind of gender term or any term that, let's say, is yesterday, and embracing modern progressive terms, especially embracing all the tech. We've talked about AI so many times, it's here to stay.
Oh, yeah.
So let's make sure
Mhm.
job descriptions reflect on what is this job actually doing, and in that AI space. That job description that you have out there, if you're going to hire or share with people, really gets them excited. So let's share with them. Here's how we see your job moving in tomorrow, and in a year from now. And it's going to be around AI. It's here to stay. We've talked about it so many times. We've seen Chat GPT, all the other ones. We've known China. So you know what? They're here to stay.
Okay. Very good, especially AI, your knowledge of it, right? Nisreen, if you have enough knowledge, you can put it to work. So I want more money because I know it, but yet I want it to help me do less work.
Yeah.
If we're
But
smart,
it's so
right?
true. It's so
Yeah.
true. It's what's I don't know, like when you're applying for a job, for example, the title really matters. It's what attracts you to the title, and you're like, okay, thinking that, okay, this is a nice modern word. I'm gonna get more paid for this. Maybe it's just like it's all in your head, but sometimes
Well,
people think that
yeah.
way.
And I was thinking more of it cut and dry as a title, meaning the salary connected with that title is more standard around as people do their
Yeah.
research, so that males and females or people of different color or where you come from, long as you have the right qualifications, resume, that's not looked at as much anymore because we're getting so much of that equal pay for equal work. What's it matter? What somebody's situation, long as they
Yeah.
have the goods and know the job. Michael, that's kind of what I wondered, if titles were becoming important, as if, hey, yeah, but this title comes with, I've done my homework.
Mm-hmm.
So, Michael, you got some numbers for us too? Different things you guys found?
One of the things that I find really interesting is workers are still, although they know company culture is down, they're enjoying flexibility, a lot of people are still saying, but I'd love to find myself a fully remote job. I'd love to find that, and that'd be perfect for me. Unfortunately, from what we have seen, only 2% of jobs are advertised as being fully remote. And that is just a number that has increasingly every year dipped from 1 year in the pandemic, where we're seeing over 70%. We're not down 2%. We're seeing companies now some companies have fully given up offices, and who knows how long they're going to be there, but we've seen that number drop substantially. Now, hybrid is actually around 26%, so that's some flexibility. But you know what? That even sort of means where you sit. But flexibility could mean where you sit plus when you work. So we're seeing people wanting to really embrace the flexibility of when and where versus a hybrid, which only talks about where. So the more flexible you can you accommodate evening work, maybe some weekend? Maybe you've got kids at different times, different weekends, when one spouse has it, one spouse has kids when they don't. So we're seeing that's being probably one of the biggest things is well, how flexible are you? And we know that companies that are more flexible will attract a far more superior skilled candidate for the long haul, and generally at a more competitive rate for the company. When it comes to sort of strategies, we always think, well, that's all for the candidate. What about for the company? Um, Set really clear expectations on objectives and what you're trying to achieve. Make sure everyone knows what the objectives are. And you know what? We've talked about this forever. Clear, open, consistent communications. Even if you have nothing new to say, it's important that you actually talk to your team and say, you know, we have nothing new to say this week. I'd love to be sharing an update, but here's where we are. Um, Always think of sort of the cultural reminders. Share your company values, recognition, your commitment to transparency, reminding employees that they belong to a bigger community, what you're doing in the community. Talk about the good work that you do and the value that your work brings to your community. People need endless tech training. We talk about sort of chat GPT and AI. My goodness, you could train on that every day, all day. People are endlessly learning. So have a very strong tech training program. And the number one thing I would say is focus on your onboarding. Make sure that when you onboard, you have a very robust, very thorough, very comprehensive onboarding program so that people feel welcomed, wrap your arms around them, that they want to stay with you. And they say, wow, this is a great choice to join this company. I love the onboarding. If this is what day 1 or 2 or 3 is like, I can't wait to see day 10,000.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder about the strength in that, the belief in that for so many people, because, you know, we all know we've come out of a very rough time. We've asked for people to be more considerate, more understanding. And often we say, are they walking the talk?
Well, you know, we see a lot on LinkedIn where companies are out volunteering at the food bank, volunteering with the Red Cross, volunteering with different charities, volunteering with United Way, and you see huge teams of people from companies really embracing their community and doing the good works that the company wants to talk about. So if that's something that's important to many organizations, because we know it's important to people, if your organization isn't there, get there fast, because that's going to matter.
Okay. Excellent. Michael, before we wrap up with you, anything else you want to touch on that we haven't gone over yet?
So I always get asked, how's the job market? So the job market is consistently strong. I would tell people there's no better time that if you are looking, brush up that resume, figure out your chat GPT and your AI, make your resume look nice and professional, update your LinkedIn, your digital portfolio, digital footprint, and engage in an aggressive personal job search.
Excellent. Really fantastic, Michael. Always wonderful to have you on. We'll chat next month. Cool survey. And very interesting and surprising.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Nazreen. See you next month.
Thank you.
We check in with Michael French from Robert Half Canada on their latest research once a month on the program. So really interesting. Nazreen, is it important to you, do you think, if you had to change jobs? Here, let me touch wood here, because as soon as you say stuff like that, is the work from home, and if so, what percentage would you be okay with if the job met all expectations? Is there kind of that magical, I'd like to be able to work from home 20, 30, 60% of the time?
I mean, I'd say about 60%. I love the idea of hybrid work. Just the flexibility of it. Me having a disability is just beneficial, where when the weather changes, my body has to go through certain situations, and the healing process is difficult. So it's the unpredictability of how my body feels every day that really resonates with my work hours. I mean, of course, I can be able to do office work every day, but it would be awesome if I get the opportunity to do hybrid work, just to have that sort of flexibility of, okay, socializing with coworkers and still being able to do and be productive at home as well.
I think for myself,
but I can't believe it's been 5 years, man.
Well, it's really hard. And I know for my time at AMI, I've had to be there right through the week, travel back and forth on weekends is what I've always done.
It feels like forever ago.
Forever, right? And then when I had the opportunity, when I started doing TV, and I had the opportunity to work a couple of days a week in London, and come in to do shoots primarily, and different things have changed. Of course, doing Kelly and Company, I had to go back to being in 5 days a week. Things as we got moving along, working from London and kind of shouting that out really seemed to be positive for a lot of people who, I guess, they get tired of the Toronto thing, so they kind of like that. Hey, this dude's in London. That's kind of cool that, you know, the host of the show is there. But for me, on the personal level, it was just nice to not have to travel. I didn't realize the draining. I just did it, threw my bag on my shoulder, away I went, and running around, and just everything having to be squeezed in that I had to do in London, or everything having to be squeezed in around Toronto if there was things, appointments there. It was always manipulation, it seemed, but I didn't realize how much it was like that until I didn't have to do that. So
it's so true. You don't realize how draining it is to commute.
Oh gosh. Now, do I think it? Do I think it's kind of cool to come in there and sit in the office and see people, you know, and get some of the feel? But it's so different now because so many certain days the office is empty, certain days it's busy. So it really depends, and on what you've got to do. Do you actually, you're there in and out in the position, do you really get that chance to actually feel like you're in a workplace, or more that you're going out of town on business to take care of something and then get back? So,
and I remember the first year of COVID, it was so challenging working from home. The idea of working from home just seemed crazy to me, and I just didn't want to do it. And now I think about it, I'm like, I can't believe that. It was, I don't want to go back. So, like full time is hard. I was like, I was drained all the time, but I didn't realize it until I started working from home. And the flexibility of it was just so nice. But the first year was so challenging. I didn't want to, like, you don't feel as productive, and then you don't have that work-life balance because you're always thinking about work. Your office is in your home. So I would find myself just kind of going through some work late at night, and I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yes.
So yeah. I
had to learn that because when I was doing TV, you know, people say, oh, you can just stop and watch the soap operas or whatever you want whenever. No. It doesn't work that way because you only can do that so much. And the novelty wears off very quickly, to where I found I was working more. Because in the office, when I was there, I worked 20 minutes and I'd have an excuse to go get another coffee, or I'd work another 10 minutes and have an excuse to go wander. I got to ask somebody something. Pick up the phone, call them and ask, oh, that seems silly. Well, I'll just walk across the campus and ask them what's going on and just do it that way. Remember, check out our podcast from your platform of choice and give us a rating and review, as well as remember our YouTube page. We'd love you to subscribe and love to know that you're enjoying the content, no matter how is best for you, whether it's our podcast or off the YouTube page. I'd like to welcome in first-time actor Jennie Bovard, who has just wrapped up filming a 6-episode first season of Pretty Blind, and she's ready to join us and spill all the tea, all the goods. So, Jennie, as a first-time actor living with low vision and albinism, can you describe your experience?
Can I? You're probably going to have to stop me at some point. I'm so excited to talk about all of this, Kelly.
Awesome. This is the loaded question that we start with, so the host can sit back and, oh, yeah, that's great. You're done? 10 minutes in? Yeah, go crazy. Fill us in.
Well, I'll be honest, there's not a lot of tea. It's all just good stuff. We just wrapped up a few days ago, finished filming those 6 episodes. And I just have to tell you that those 18 days of shooting were hands down some of the best days of my life, the best experiences of my life. So good that I recited a literal love letter to the cast and crew at the little wrap party. It was just that every single human involved in the project, at every single stage, every single department, they all had so much skill and talent. I was surrounded by so much of it, and it really created the most supportive work environment. And it was way too much fun to be work. Like, yes, the days were long, but to say that that was work, it was too much fun. And really, you know, as a non-actor, as someone who's been working for 20 years living with a disability, living with albinism, I go into a lot of these situations with like a let's see what happens, right? And let's
Mm.
do all of our due diligence and explain what our needs are ahead of time and along the way. But going with the attitude of like, let's see what happens. And I've had some good experiences, great experiences on different sets, and maybe not some so great experiences as well. But in on the TV set environment, as you both can imagine, like there's bright lights, it's busy,
Hmm.
there's a lot of people, there's a lot of expensive equipment, and it's changing hour to hour. Where are the people? Where are the equipment? And are we moving locations? And there's a lot that could go wrong, or a lot that could set up barriers. But
Yeah.
I'm here to say that it can be done, y'all. The this is, I feel like, the first time anything like this has really been undertaken on such a scale that I know of, anyway. And everyone just listened and understood, and it was not a big deal to them to grant me the access to this magic that is this world. And I say we because I am so lucky, yes, to be the lead, but so many other folks in the blind and visually impaired community were able to join me in that. Dan Berger, a stand-up and someone we've seen across AMI, he played a really integral role in the show, a great, funny, ridiculous character, and so many other folks as well from my Goalball crew. From the lighting to using descriptive language, they all just kind of got it, guys. And it was so seamless and not a big deal to like support and empower each of us to be there. So there's
Well,
part of my love letter. That's part of
yeah,
it.
I love that because I'm so glad that you had that whole concept of let's try it out because I just watched the trailer and you were such a natural. You were
Oh,
such a
thank you.
natural at doing it. No, I have to say, I was like, wow, this is her first time. Stop this.
Oh,
But I want to hear some of the production. Like, what types of things were they accommodating, and how was the whole experience?
I'm so thankful that you say that. That's such a nice compliment because I'm it's coming through. The support that I got is shining through. I myself haven't seen the promo yet. I can't believe it. I have to bug some people. But I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. And as I was saying, it was just such a seamless experience. The lighting, for example, that's a big thing for me. And the team was able to create an environment where it most of the time was more comfortable than my day-to-day life being out in the world. Aside from in my own home little studio office here, it was so comfortable, and they problem solved and found cameras and found scenarios that allowed us to use less light and prevent long time spent, like long periods of time spent outside, and clear paths throughout the set, right? Getting from point A to point B, rather just getting around, was not only made possible just by people being conscious of where they left things and clear paths of travel, but everyone knew how to ask how to help. And that was a big part of it, is they listened and they asked. And not being a non-actor was certainly part of the challenge, but I was surrounded by such good leadership in a director and in really all of the other actors and actual professionals. I leaned so heavily on that, you guys, because they let me sort of just go for it and trust my instincts. And I could always rely on them to steer things in the right direction if it wasn't working. And so I'm so glad that it's coming through. I think that it's going to be funny. First of all, we had so many silly geese working on this thing, like professional silly geese, that how could it not be funny? But the stories, I hope, are relatable, especially for the audience members who are blind and low vision. And I'm so I'm so proud to play a character that has albinism, that is like a human being and not a villain. And Jenny, the character, is just going about her day and encountering the people and things in the world. And the whole IDV, integrated described video aspect, that is so super cool and so super unique as well. So how lucky am I to have had this surreal experience working with literal legends, people I used to sit on the floor in my bedroom and watch on a little TV. I got to work with some of those people and people I admire online and admire their podcasts. And there's a goalball episode. So there are all the highlights, and there's so much I want to say. I'm so happy and excited. And I'm going to pause now because I've been talking forever. So thank
Good.
you for
No,
letting me.
Kelly's enjoying
That's great.
that.
I just think it's wonderful. I mean, the ridiculous part is we got about 6 minutes, so there's no way I can ask everything I'd like to know about set and everything like that. I know we'll talk about it before
We need a part 2 of this.
it airs. Oh, yeah, we'll get into some of those other things. One of the things you mentioned, I just want to quantify for people too, Jenny, is the positive reflection on a person with albinism. We know that over the years there have been some very strange portrayals, and I know that's what you hearken back to, the way around the world certain viewpoints are. So really good for you. What I also love is the support of the cast and the crew. I don't just mean making sure you don't trip over a cable and everything like that. It's the confidence that people give you to stretch yourself out there, do things that otherwise you're certainly not walking down the street and carrying on like that. You are able to spread your wings and have that fun and explore, and everybody's with you. So even if someone says, hey, maybe try that, maybe not as big, there's no, oh my gosh, I made the mistake of my lifetime going that big. It's a lot of support, isn't it?
It was very safe in that way. And that is something I heard from the other actors as well.
Nice.
And in particular, the actors who are blind, they're with me in feeling just so safe in, like I was saying, just kind of going for it and trusting our instincts. And not to correct you, but it was never big enough on this set. If you thought you were being over the top, it was probably not quite silly enough.
Just an example. I know what you mean, though. I can imagine.
We're gonna do it again, and it's going to be more silly the next time. So we have an even sillier take to choose from.
But tell about those
really
serious
the environment
moments too, though, because it isn't all, like you said, there's those moments of real that you were pleased with too.
There were a lot of moments where I felt very emotional, and I don't normally get emotional unless I'm like frustrated or I feel like something's out of my control and I'm mad about it. Or, on occasion, people can make me cry, but this was like emotion in the nicest way. And a lot of it came from, there are a lot of moments and scenes within these episodes that reflect and mirror a lot of my own personal experiences. A lot of the stories we're telling, yes, they're my lived experiences. Some of them are from the podcast, the Low Vision Moments podcast, but they also come from some experiences of people who appeared on the podcast too, and people in my life who are living with disability. And so many times the real lived experience was reflected in the script and in a nice moment where, for example, there were moments where the character is saying, well, why me? Why am I getting this opportunity? And that was an actual line. And I had to keep it together on set. So I had to have those tears when I was memorizing the script. But I did let the people around me know, like, hey, this is very real. And this is, I have some real feelings about this, and they're all good and they're all positive, that we're putting this stuff out there because it's going to be relatable and it's going to be raising awareness in a fun way. But those experiences where it's like, why me? Like, why do I suddenly get access to this world when it's something I went to film school and I have a diploma and this, that, and the other thing. And there came a time when I said to myself, well, this is not the world for me. I don't have access to this. It's not ready for me yet, or I'm not ready for it. And those moments where I was like, well, I'm really doing this thing, and these people are really making this possible, and they make me feel like I belong here. And we all felt so safe to go ahead and do that.
What a tremendous aha moment. You want to tell us real quick a couple of challenges? What have they been through this whole process?
I thought there are a lot of words. When you're the lead in a 6-episode series, there are a lot of words to memorize daily, and figuring out that process, I was real nervous about that. But again, everyone was super supportive, and I figured out my system after a couple of days. The other big challenge for me is I don't think anyone talks about what it's like coming back to reality, coming back to the real world after such an experience, because you dip your toe in this pond and you have so much fun and you meet these people and really make such strong connections that it's like, I just want to do this stuff all the time. And now I'm back in the real world, and I need almost like, it's like when you come back from vacation, I need like a halfway house situation, some kind of rehab transition situation.
To get back to normacy. Well, we used to say in theater, because we could do it, we'd overlap stuff. You'd finish one project and you'd start right into another because of the next day, the Monday blues after the show closed. Jenny, thanks so much for sharing. It is beautiful. And at some point, get Dan to do his darn movie guy voice, because it's amazing when he does it. Take care of yourself.
He's good. Thank you.
You bet. Jennie Bovard joining us, folks. Wonderful. We got a great chance, a lot of information about her new upcoming series. We'll talk more about it here on the program as we get towards it in the fall. Nazreen and I will be back tomorrow, and on the next edition of the show, beside for being outdoors for the sake of being outdoors, how do we get quality time with nature? Lawrence Gunther shares some ideas. Plus, speaking of ideas, art and culture critic Amy Amanti is back to the show with suggestions on how to make the most of spring experiences. All that as we're waving at you on the next edition of Kelly & Company.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly & Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.